This is how I slept in my hair. My hair is so stick straight, and like no, anything I do to style it does not work. So I have been trying to force it to have more texture, and this is what we got. I can't even see my screen, so I don't even know if this turned out good, but we're here now. So however it is, it's however it's going to be. Anyways, good morning and welcome to today's morning message. I've decided to do things a little bit differently. I live in Brazil, and right now it is fall, which is only important because it is like 50 Fahrenheit, 15 Celsius, and we don't have central heating. Like, I'm pretty sure if you mention the words central heating in this town, you would be laughed at. There's just not the energetic infrastructure for this. The houses aren't built to have central heating. So basically when it starts to get really fucking cold, which in this city it does, you're just shit out of luck. So inside my house right now is freezing, and I am in the one spot in my home that is directly underneath the sun so that I'm not cold, and I'm actually sweating, so that's great, right? So this is my garden. I recorded a video about my garden that I'll post soon. These are banana trees. But yeah, this is not the video to talk about the history of my garden. I'm just trying to be warm. Hopefully this is a little bit more visually entertaining than my office. Other points of business before we get into it. I've decided to mix up the way that I do this, in which previously I would write the reading over on Medium, and then I would read the reading on video for YouTube. I'm gonna switch that. So I'm basically, I have my notes the same way. I really love doing my notes this way. I don't think this will change. But I have my notes here, and I'm going to talk through the reading on camera, and then after I record this, I'm going to type up the reading for Medium. Another thing, I have two cats, two kittens, that absolutely love each other, are absolutely obsessed with each other, and they are currently playing, and probably will continue to play throughout this video. So if you see just a tussle happening behind me, just know it's in love. And I hope you get to see the tussle, honestly, because it's really freaking cute, okay? Anyways, so if you're new here, you probably didn't get this part of the video. But if you're new here, the way this works is I ask myself a question that I feel like I need to ask myself, and then I pull tarot to get my answers. I go through and I write all of my notes on the tarot cards, and then I turn my notes from my own reading into a reading for whoever else might need it. Because I've discovered or figured out, I've observed that so many people tend to be on the same wavelength as me, asking themselves the same question, needing the same answers, the same kind of guidance. And every time I share a reading like this, like, people always message me like, oh my god, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And I just think it's so fucking wicked that what I'm doing to help myself, if I just change the format a little bit, it also will help you. So, you know, that's fucking sick. And, you know, I feel called to do this. I really enjoy doing it. Honestly, it really does help me in so many ways, and it helps you in so many ways. And so why not do it, right? What's there to be ashamed of, honestly? Anyways, this is lemon water. Today's question is, what can I talk about that'll actually help other people? Which, you know, would be for you, what can you talk about that will actually help other people? Because honestly, the secret to life is that life is about other people, right? Everything you do is meant to help somebody, hopefully. Like, anything done with good intentions that will get you any sort of good reward is done to help somebody. right? So what can you talk about that will help other people? I really hope I'm not like visibly squinting really hard against the sun. Honestly, if I am, fuck it, we're already here. Anyways, so our cards today, we have the 10 of Cups, Death, 6 of Wands reversed, Moon reversed, Double reversed. We had a jumper, which was the 3 of Swords reversed, which is basically as I'm shuffling, a card falls out. And then the back of the deck is the Ace of Swords. If you don't know what any of that means, it's totally fine. It really does not matter. So the first section of my notes is called Spread Notes. So as I was shuffling these cards, I heard in my head, if it will always go the way that you assume it to go, how are you assuming that it will go? And could you create space in your assumption for the doubt of, what if it was easier than I ever imagined? And the context for this is, I was thinking about like my career as a content creator, and how I keep assuming that once it finally does start to work in the way that I've been hoping it will work all this time, that it will require from me like 18-hour days every single day. Basically, that it will be like the hardest, most difficult work I've ever done in my life in order to be successful. So if that's the way that I'm assuming that it will go, and if what I assume is true, could I create space in my assumption that the work that it will require will be easier than I could ever imagine? Like, theoretically, I could assume that the work required for me to get the career that I want would be even less effort than the effort I'm giving it now. Just some food for thought, right? Also, I've been seeing a lot of hummingbirds recently, which is like kind of out of season, not totally out of season. But as I was doing these notes, I saw a hummingbird like sniffing around the bananas, growing the banana tree. Can you see those? I think you can see them now. I hope you can see them now, because I can't see shit on my screen. Anyway, I've been seeing a lot of hummingbirds, and I know those have a spiritual meaning. I forget. It's like transformation, fast-moving energy, something like that. I've been seeing a lot of hummingbirds, and I saw them, and I felt called to say something about that. So hummingbirds, if that means anything to you. Let's see. A lot of these cards that I pulled are some of the more negative cards in the deck, which, like, negative subjective, right? But in case you know anything about tarot and you heard me say like Death, Devil reverse, and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? It's not necessarily negative energy. I think more so what the spread is trying to say overall is that what you can talk about that will actually help people is teaching them how to liberate themselves from negative energy. And of course we'll get into that as we go card by card, which is to preface. Liberation from negativity requires a stage of being disillusioned, which ideally would happen with love, respect, and compassion. It doesn't always happen that way for everybody, but if your work is to talk about how to disillusion yourself, then you can, of course, control the context and the tone that goes into that. So you can talk about how to disillusion yourself from your fears, your limiting beliefs, all that wonderful stuff that we trick ourselves into thinking. But you can do so in a way that is infused with love and compassion and respect for another person's journey. But still the core remains the same, that if you're not where you want to be mentally or physically, at least what I believe is that you have something in your mindset that's preventing you from getting there. And usually what prevents you from getting there is some sort of illusion. And we could talk about that all fucking day, you know, which does come back throughout this reading. And of course, what you can talk about all fucking day is an amazing thing to start a career on, right? Because you can just go at it all the time. That's exactly what you want, right? Anyways, another way that you could take these negative cards, is you don't have to force positivity or optimism, because regardless of the contents of your message, which will sometimes be harsh or direct, the underlying energy is love, which can always be felt. So you can tell someone to their face that, like, oh, I think you are falling into the illusion of fear and you're having a fear-based mindset, and that's what's preventing you from getting what you want. You can say something that harsh and that direct without it being cruel, right? Another thing, it could also mean that you don't need to pressure your message into having the perfect delivery. Like, just deliver it however it wants to come out, and don't pander to the idea of how everyone's attention span is dying. This is something I was thinking about as I was considering making the video this way, because it is different than what I have been doing. But I was like, oh, but like I'll have to keep looking at my notes, and like what I have to say, what I need to say won't be like already ready made. Like I won't have the chance to edit what I want to say and make sure it comes out like as eloquently as it possibly can. It's like, it doesn't need to be that, right? Like, however the message is being impressed upon me to deliver, there's a reason, right? Like, nothing is a coincidence. So if I'm being led to say it one specific way in the moment, I have to trust that, because sometimes all it takes is the difference of one word for another for the message to really land for you, you know? And like, I'm saying that to you, but I also want you to hold that energy for whoever it is that you have come here to serve and help and talk to. Those same people need your message in the exact way that you feel called to say it, because really nothing we can say is unique, right? The only unique thing that we can do is deliver our message in a different way. And so the specific way that you feel called to deliver your message is not a coincidence. It is the specific way that the person who feels called to listen to you needs to hear that message in order for that message to finally click for them. So don't listen to this idea of like, oh, the world's attention span is dying. Like, if you can't hook attention in the first 3 seconds, then you're fucked. Like, no one will listen, no one will care. That only is true if you assume that it is, right? If you're watching this far in this video, I didn't do anything to hook your attention. You know, you're watching this because you feel called to watch this. Trust that there are other people like that out there that will listen to something, even if it's not completely optimized to capture their attention. Because this thing of like, oh, the attention span is only 3 seconds, does not apply to everybody, right? It just applies to the most active users of certain social media platforms. That's not everybody. Let me drink a water. So when it comes to delivering your message, in whatever way you choose to do that, which is ultimately like your soul's work, right? When it comes to delivering your message, take your time and put in daily effort, and expect yourself to create less on the daily scale so that you can create more on the long-term scale. Because I've noticed this in myself recently. I've decided, like, I used to batch create everything, and so like within a week, because I would sit down and draft, write, edit like 7-10 articles at a time, I could create a massive library in a very short amount of time. But my quality really suffered for that, because I was creating, like forcing myself to like write the next word, instead of actually listening to what I felt like I needed to talk about, right? I was over strategizing way too early for no good reason, and I got no results from it. But since I've decided to take my time with what I create, I'm creating much less. I feel like my momentum is much slower, but I also feel like when I look at the growing library of what I've created, I feel like it's much more cohesive, and I'm much prouder of it. I feel like it says something much more real, even though I'm creating at a much slower rate. And then I have felt very fertile in the amount of ideas I've been having, and I don't always get the idea in a moment in time in which it is possible for me to act on it. Sometimes all I can do is just like scribble a note and then tuck that note into the rest of my notes of like ideas that would be cool to do. When you have away. If you get an idea that you feel like, oh, that would be a really good idea, act on it as soon as possible, right? If it is impossible for you to act on it, life has just given you the idea and it's like, my hands are tied, I can't do anything. Gather that idea. Don't hold yourself to the expectation of doing it, but gather it, because you never know when you will see that idea again and you'll be like, oh, actually, I should do that right now. I have the time right now to do that. So write them all down, do what you can, and follow your intuitive nudges instead of trying to guess what life wants you to say. Instead, say what life is asking you to say, right? Don't get too like psychological chess about it. Don't try to get too far into the head of the person that you're trying to help. Just say what you have been asked to say in the way that you have asked to say it, and trust that that is enough, and that will reach the person who needs to hear it in the way that they need to hear it to actually have helped them. Drink of water. Next we have the Ten of Cups. So this is like your principal energy. This is like the overall overarching thing that you need to be talking about. And that is, you need to talk about happiness, love, joy, and celebration, and constantly reconnecting with the bigger vision, which in that you need to choose like what your bigger vision is. Like, do you want to focus more on wealth or success in your career or building a family or being a specific type of person? You need to have an idea of what the overarching vision of the end goal is for you and the people that you're trying to help, right? Beyond that, after you have that chosen, you need to be constantly bringing everything you talk about back into that. So teach the expectation or the assumption of the fulfillment of that goal, even though the quality of the day-to-day experience ebbs and flows. I hope that makes sense. It made sense for me, and I'm going to assume it makes sense for you. I'm not going to over-explain that. Next, I felt led to explain the Jumper card. So the Jumper is the Three of Swords reverse, which is kind of the shadow side of what we just talked about. So talk about how to let go of pain or painful narratives or painful memories in whatever way makes sense to you. Like, when you think about that concept of like, how do I let go of a painful narrative or a painful memory in my life? Whatever answer you have is right? And your answer might change, and that evolved answer might also be right. You know, there is no wrong. Everyone's on a different place in their journey, needing a different piece at a different piece in time, and at a different place in time. And whatever piece you have to offer right now is correct, because there is someone out there who is only capable of receiving that piece, right? As you evolve and as your method for these big life questions evolves, there will also be people at that new level who are needing what you have to say. But regardless of where you're at in the journey, there's always going to be someone a couple steps behind you who needs exactly what you have to offer right now, even if what you have to offer right now changes. Whew. That was a big one. Okay. Also, you need to teach forgiveness and compassion for those who hurt you. Make sense of that however you need to. I personally believe that like forgiveness and compassion are important, because not having them is like you're just poisoning yourself, right? That has been my experience. If you rationalize or understand that concept in a different way, that is also correct for the reasons we just discussed, right? And you need to teach against righteous anger. There's really no such thing as righteous anger. There's just anger, and anger is unexpressed anxiety. And so when you stop at just righteous anger, at like, oh, I feel like it is valid for me to be angry, that is ultimately an energy that contributes more fear to the universe than it does love, and that's not what we're here to do, right? So teach against righteous anger, again, in whatever way makes sense to you for wherever you are in your journey. And teach how to give yourself a clean break from your past. When we go through a healing journey from a specific life trauma, we learn piece by piece how to let go of one specific aspect of the past. We don't leap forward into a new life until we've reached that point where we've let go of enough that we can have that clean break of like, okay, my past just like literally does not matter, you know? And that moment is such a transformative and liberating moment of like, whatever the hell I went through, like, sure, it might give me experience to help me going forward and how I go about my life's work, but ultimately, objectively, my past just does not fucking matter, and the only thing that matters is right now. So what am I gonna do about the state of my life right now? So that's a big message that you need to touch on. Need more water. It is so difficult to just sit and talk. Like mouth lines, oh my gosh. But on the plus side, I am so hydrated. As you know, there's always a reason for everything. Next we have death. I actually have a tattoo of death right here. I really don't know if you can see that. Which I like straight up stole this from the first ever tarot deck that I had, because I just love the message so much, right? So death sounds really fucking scary. For me, it's one of my favorite cards because you can't have a new beginning unless you first have a phase of death. And I think that's just so profound. Every time I get the death card, I'm like, yeah. Like, sure, it's gonna hurt, right? But also, every single time you have a phase of death, it's just the way of things, like the laws of the universe, all of them say that every time you let something go, something better takes its place, right? And so we should look forward to these moments in which life encourages us to let go of something or a massive amount of something, because it means that we're being prepared to receive a massive amount of something. You can't receive with empty hands, right? So whenever you ask for something and life empties your hands, that means that life is preparing to put something new in your hands, which is excellent. That's so exciting. It's just first we have to have the courage and the bravery to withstand letting go and having nothing and not knowing yet how this new thing that we're about to receive is going to look or when it will come. So you need to teach people how to release the fear around this phase of death so that they can embrace change, both internal and external, because every external change first starts as an internal change, right? And then you need to teach them how to have faith in this process of sometimes life is going to empty your hands, and you might have like 2 or 3 months in which you have empty hands, and then all of a sudden you receive the life of your dreams. So you need to teach them how to have faith and reconnect to that vision that we talked about in the first card, the 10 of Cups, of like, you having the desire sets the GPS, and everything that happens along the way, regardless of how it looks moment to moment, is the most effective path to that desire that you set in the GPS, right? So if life empties your hands and leaves you with nothing, even if it hurts, even if it's scary, even if you don't know what's going to happen next, you need to have faith that that specific experience is part of the most effective, what is it? Oh, there's a phrase that I heard that I really, really love, but it's escaping me right now. That's gonna bother me. But anyways, whatever you're experiencing, however good or however bad it might feel right now, is part of the most effective bridge of events that gets you from point A to point B. That's something that's a big thing that you need to be talking about. Okay, I got everything there. And then we have the 6 of Wands. This was kind of an interesting card for me to see in the reverse position, because the 6 of Wands is a very happy energy. It's all about like, you won the battle, not necessarily the war, but you won the battle, and you come home from the battle and like your whole community is like, yay, like you won the battle. So in the reverse position, it would mean to teach against the dependency on that energy, which would mean teach against going after quick wins or shortcuts or external validation. If anything is worth doing once, it's worth doing twice. And whenever you take a shortcut, you will always have to redo it. I don't think ever in my experience taking a shortcut has ever saved me any time, energy, or effort. It's always made me have to redo whatever I just did, right? So when it comes to something that's so incredibly important, like these big life energies that we're talking about, of like deciding what you want and creating a life to go after it, when it comes to those kinds of things, you need to teach against all of the quick wins and the shortcuts and like the dependency on external validation that perhaps the other people in your space might be preaching. And you need to talk about how to be so internally stable that the external world is powerless over you. I saw a video from Julian himself. I suppose if you are watching me, there's like a 50-50 chance you know who I'm talking about. Basically, he's a guy who talks about shadow work and creating an internal stable sense of self. And he was walking through a very busy downtown center at night, like clubs and stuff like that. And he was talking to the camera, and he was like completely calm and unaffected, and like all around him is just like absolute chaos. Like even people trying to instigate him, because is that the right word? Because he was recording himself, right? So there's people like trying to mess with him, and like literally they could not touch him, they could not interrupt him. And there's such a powerful energy. I'll have to find that video and link it, because it's just like, wow, what a video. Anyways, that's the kind of energy that you need to teach people how to cultivate in themselves, again, in whatever way makes sense for you right now, where you're at in your journey. And if your answer to that evolves, let it evolve, and trust that the people who need that more evolved answer will find you as well, right? Like the people that you're meant to help are not going to walk alongside you for their entire lives, and neither should they, right? If you help them effectively, they'll no longer need you, and that should be the goal, right? And so let yourself evolve, because you'll find the next group of people that you're meant to help. It's my cat here, trying to knock over my pitcher of water. Anyways, next we have the double reverse. She's trying to go. So talk about how to release fears, addictions, dependencies, in whatever way resonates for you. You can be addicted to just about anything, right? And you probably have some sort of addiction in your life, which I personally define as like anything you do to distract yourself from the experience that you're having, right? Anything you do compulsively, like you can't stop yourself from doing it. It's a big theme. So talk about that in whatever format it takes in your life, and be honest about your process getting over it. Also, talk about how assuming that there will be another emergency will manifest more emergencies for you. So as I said in the beginning, like if it will always go the way that you assume it will go, if you are always assuming that there's another emergency just around the corner that you need to prepare for, excuse me, I always burp when I do these. I feel like it's like the universe saying like, yeah, that's exactly what you should be saying, but it's so distracting. Anyways, if you assume that there's always another emergency around the corner and you're always preparing to deal with that emergency, you will always attract to yourself emergencies to be dealt with. That's a really interesting energy that you should be talking about. And again, whatever way makes sense for you. I'm like a parrot. I'm just repeating that same little, what would you call it? Disclaimer? I don't know. Anyways. You also need to teach how to see and interrogate your own limiting beliefs, fearful assumptions, and counterproductive adopted rule books for how you should be. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into that. Okay. Teach that the experience of fear is real and valid as it happens, but is ultimately optional because it's an illusion and actually self-harm that can be managed. And what I mean by that is, like, if you experience a moment in time in which you had the experience of fear, that moment is valid and real, and your memory of it is real. Like, don't gaslight yourself into thinking like, oh, I was not scared in that moment. You were scared, that's fine. You had the experience of fear, that's fine, right? But it would be foolish to think that, how am I going to say this? Fear is necessary, or that fear is more powerful than you are, or that fear is always going to be a major part of your experience of life, or just because you were afraid in that one moment, that you will always be afraid in all similar moments, right? So I'm not saying that the moment in time that you experienced in which fear was your main experience, I'm not saying that that was invalid or that was an illusion. That is how you actually felt. That is how you actually experienced life. I am saying, however, that the concept of falling into that fear was an illusion, right? The fear that you felt in your head, the story that you told yourself, was an illusion, but the feeling you had, the physical response that you had to that illusion was real. That was your experience, and there's no use lying about that, right? But ultimately, the story that you told yourself in your head before you had the physical reaction was an illusion that could have been avoided. And so there's nothing wrong with having fallen into that illusion, and there's nothing wrong with potentially falling into it again, but we do need to talk about how to stop that, because it is something that you can manage. It is something that you can prevent. Every single thought path that you go down is something that you subconsciously or consciously chose to do, and you can never control the first thought you have, but you can always control the second, right? And so if you have a fearful first thought, it is ultimately your choice, subconsciously or consciously, whether or not your second thought will extrapolate on that first thought, right? So that's a very interesting process that you should be talking about and teaching people how to manage in whatever way makes sense for you right now. And then, oh, I think I got them. Oh, we're almost done. What time are we at? 32 minutes. Wow. Okay. Next we have the moon reversed. You need to talk about the way out of confusion. I personally believe that confusion is a choice, and I say this as someone who feels confused quite often. I feel like confusion almost always happens as the result of hearing something internally that the external world has told you is not correct, and being stuck between your loyalties to yourself and your loyalties to the external world. And the way out of confusion is disregarding the external world and going after what your internal world tells you to do. Personally, that's my take on that point. It might feel different to you. The answer might feel different, and that's totally fine. Say what feels real to you. Like, we're all at different places in our journey. Perhaps your understanding of what any of this is or how any of this should be applied would feel absolutely ridiculous to me, but if it feels real to you, that's all that really matters, right? You get what I'm saying? Like, even as you're hearing me say this, if something in you asks you to do something that you think that I would disagree with, it doesn't matter, right? Even if I do disagree with you, that doesn't matter. Like, I'm just not the person that you're meant to help, and that's fine. You don't have to be for everybody. Even if you respect what I have to say and you like to listen to these messages, you don't have to be for me, right? That's just not how it works. You can receive my energy without me needing to receive yours. Anyways, teach unbreakable self-trust, which is kind of what I was just saying, and faith in the process. We talked about that enough. I'm not going to go into that. Talk about the manifestation process not as woo-woo magic, but as the inevitable consequence of mental hygiene and a clearly defined goal. Every single thing I've ever studied, and I studied neuroscience in college, has said to me that if you have a clearly defined understanding of where you want to go, and you maintain the mental hygiene necessary to not fall into the doubt or the fears or all of the illusions that come along that try to distract you from where you want to go. If you can maintain the hygiene necessary to be like, no, I'm still going to get this, you're going to get it. It might take years, it might take decades, but you're going to get it. It's just a process of setting your mind on something and taking care of your inner world enough to make getting that inevitable, and it almost always will be inevitable as long as the desire is reasonable, right? Like, you can't wish like, oh, I want to be born a Martian. Like, that's not reasonable. Like, maybe you could go and live on Mars. Like, that's not something so out of what is reasonable right now. But you could not reverse time and be born as a Martian, right? Anyways, manifestation is a topic that has become way more woo-woo than it needs to be. Like, sure, the woo-woo explanation might serve for some people. I'm not saying that it won't. Who am I, right, to speak against that? But I don't feel like you're being led to teach manifestation as like this magical thing, but rather as like a consequence of maintaining your inner world to a certain standard. I am sweating. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna go inside to edit this. I'm gonna be like freezing. It's so whatever. It's what life is asking me to do. Okay, also talk about how to keep the faith even when no proof is found. Sometimes you're gonna be in the middle of the journey and it's like you want to go from New York to Los Angeles, and you're in that point in the journey in which life is asking you to drive a car into and out of the Grand Canyon, and you're gonna be like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? But if you get out of the Grand Canyon, you'll be that much closer to Los Angeles, right? So even if you can't see the reason in what you're being asked to do, trust that you're internally aligned enough to what you want that anything life is asking of you, like any of these weird random side quests, ultimately will have something to do in you achieving what you want. And be naked and unafraid and teach others how to do the same. One thing that's really held me back in creating content online is that I've decided that certain aspects of my life are too shameful to talk about and too shameful to share. And it turns out as soon as I decide to no longer have shame about those things and share them, they are the things that resonate the most with the people that I'm trying to help. Which is to say, the shame that you feel about your life and like certain aspects, certain chapters, certain things that happen, all of that shame is optional, and it's something that you're inflicting on yourself. The things that you live through are not objectively shameful, but you are choosing to feel shame about them. And if you can release your shame about all of it and share freely whatever you feel like is relevant to teaching your message, you will have a much more effective and enjoyable time at doing what life is asking you to do. Finally, we have the back of the deck, which is the Ace of Swords. This card is basically the underlying subconscious energy that ties everything together. So be willing to have all assumptions challenged. So everything you assume to be true about life, about yourself, about where you're going, about how to get there, assume all of it could potentially be wrong, and be willing to be proven wrong by life. Think of it like this. If the mindset that you had right now was enough to get the life that you wanted to have, don't you think you would already have it by now? Which is to say, if the assumptions you already had about life were accurate enough and aligned enough to live the life that you've always wanted to live, you would already be living it. So if you're not living it, that means some number of assumptions that you're making about yourself, about the world, about how to exist in the world is not aligned with the life that you want. And so if you want the life that you want, if you want to live that, you have to be willing to let go of the assumptions that are getting in the way of you living that life. This next one is a little bit ironic. Trust not the advice from outside of you, but instead only the creative nudge inside of you. Do it because it feels right and not because someone told you that doing X gets Y. I know that in saying that, I have just spent like 40 minutes telling you what to do. I know that there's irony in that. What I mean by that is you have probably decided that the way to get to the life that you want has to involve a specific process. And you might be right. But you have also decided that certain people who have done that process and now make their living off of telling you how to do that process are correct. And they might not be. Perhaps they are genuinely teaching what helped them get to where they are, but the game is no longer the same as it was when they were first getting started, right? and also what works for them, the important realizations that they need to have in order to be successful, is likely the basis of what they're teaching. But what realizations they needed to have to be successful has more to do with the assumptions that they had before they figured out the mindset that got them success than it does where you are actually at, if that makes sense. Like, the blockages that you have and the blockages that they had are likely not the same blockages. And while they might be teaching you how to overcome their blockages effectively, that does not mean that the blockages that they're teaching, that they're focusing on, are the same blockages that you have. So when it comes to listening to advice from other people who are teaching you the technical skills to get to where you want to go, do not assume that everything these people say is 100% accurate. And when it comes down to it, if there's a conflict between what you feel called to do and what you have been told to do, always do what you were called to do. Okay, be humble and childlike. Kind of the same thing that we've been talking about, honestly. Don't assume you know anything. Be willing to learn, and in that, be willing to be humble enough to say, like, I was wrong, even if it means saying I was wrong about literally everything in every single way that you have been thinking up till now. It's my sweater. I thought it was my cat. Learn and study, but let intuition be king. If you feel called to study one specific technical process, study and learn what other people are saying. Do not let that learning get in the way of you doing what you feel called to do. Follow the weird side quests. If you feel called to do something that makes no literal or theoretical sense to anybody who has ever walked a similar pathway to what you're trying to walk right now, do not listen to them and do the weird little side quests. I'm so pro weird little side quests. Okay, and finally, you don't need to see reason to have faith. You don't need to understand why you're being asked to do something in order to do it. You will probably not even understand why you had to do something until enough time has passed that you can look at it with hindsight. My favorite example to explain this is Steve Jobs dropped out of college, which was something that nobody understood. And he decided to audit a calligraphy class at the same college that he just dropped out of. And he learned all about calligraphy, right? And then later on, when he went about inventing his first computer, he decided to put special fonts in the computer based on everything he learned in his calligraphy class. So he took the calligraphy class. It made no sense to anybody, but he felt called to do it. And then later it became the reason that we have fonts, because the Windows computer did not have fonts until they stole the fonts from Apple, right? So you may feel called, and will probably feel called, to do something that makes no sense to anybody who claims to be an expert on anything that you're trying to do, and that does not matter. They don't have to understand in order for you to do it. And more likely than not, you having done that weird little side quest is going to come back around to be the one thing that differentiates you enough for you to make a name for yourself, in which, if you had followed strictly the teachings of the professor, you would have ended up exactly like all of the students of that professor and not stood out enough from the crowd in order to actually have the level of success that you want. Well, anyways, that's all I have for you today. What a mouthful. We're looking at a ridiculous amount of time. Anyways, I'll talk to you later. Bye bye. I need to figure out an outro for these.